So at the same exact time Sony announced their decision to stop releasing physical copies of games, they also announced they'd be closing the digital storefronts for PS3 and PS Vita over the next year. Which would be funny if it all didn't suck so much. Well, if you've got a PS3 or a PS Vita, the best thing you can do at this point, if you haven't already, is jailbreak them. I'll be going over the PS3 specifically in this video, and we'll probably cover PS Vita in another one, but basically both of them can be jailbroken, and this means the storefront closures won't prevent you from adding new games to either of them, and you can do tons of other cool stuff too. So I'm gonna go over some of my favorite things a jailbroken PS3 can do in case you're new to this or on the fence about doing it. Something important to note is that only certain PS3 models can be permanently jailbroken without doing hardware modification. All PS3 fat models can, and many slim models can. Super slim models, however, cannot. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost. Even if your PS3 isn't compatible with custom firmware and you don't want to open the whole thing up to mess with a bunch of wires and stuff, you can still use something called PS3 Hen, which is a homebrew enabler rather than a permanent jailbreak, which still allows you to do many of the same things a permanently jailbroken PS3 can do. Basically, all that to say, if you've got a PS3, you've got some really cool stuff you can do with it, and you don't gotta feel all left out and whatever. Because generally speaking, the things I talk about will be possible for you whether you're running CFW, Hen, or QCFW, aka jailbreaking via hardware. But since this won't be a tutorial on jailbreaking your PS3 or anything, I'll leave some links on the different methods in the description just so you have them. But if you're curious about some of the capabilities of a jailbroken PS3, get yourself comfortable and I'll yap about it for a little bit. The first and biggest benefit to jailbreaking your PS3 is even after the storefront closes, you can still download and install PS3 games and DLCs to your console. And there are a couple of simple ways you can do this. For instance, you can use your PC to download and transfer the game files over via FTP server or a good old-fashioned USB stick. Or you can install the PKGI app to your PS3, which will allow you to download games directly from your PS3. Keep in mind, PKGI uses Sony servers to download the PKG file for whatever game you're wanting, like PSN exclusives. But just because access to the store is closing doesn't necessarily mean those servers are being taken down, at least not yet. After all, Sony said for the foreseeable future, previously purchased games will be available to re-download even after the store closes, so the games are technically still there for now. Even if those servers do go down, you can still find the files elsewhere and move them over using a PC, since even many PSN exclusive games have been preserved somewhere. So if at some point you can't use PKGI, it's unlikely the game you're looking for has been totally lost, even if it was digital only. I won't say where you can download any of these files specifically, I'm not trying to get sued or whatever, but I'm just saying, should you choose to search for them, I'm sure you could find them. On a related note, any PSN exclusive content, whether game or DLC, will also require a wrap file which authenticates the game, but PKGI should apply those automatically. Something to also note as far as downloading and installing games goes, since this stuff was kind of confusing to me at first, is your file format is going to be of some importance, like if storage is a concern. Folder format and ISO format can be stored on an external HDD, where PKG files must be stored on your PS3's internal HDD. So just keep that in mind if you don't have a lot of internal storage on your PS3 and you have a choice between formats. Otherwise, whether there's a best file format to go with overall, it really depends on who you ask, because it largely comes down to preference. Some people like the PKGs appearing right on the XMVs, some people prefer ISO files that could be stored wherever they want, etc, etc. So I'm not really going to recommend one format over another, I'm just saying there are options, and depending on your needs or preferences, you might like one better than the others. Regardless, things like PSN exclusives are always going to be PKG files, and sometimes you'll find one file type won't work where another one will. So basically on occasion you might just have to get over it if you do have some kind of hang up. Jailbreaking your PS3 is definitely something you shouldn't procrastinate doing. And you know what else you shouldn't procrastinate? Making important medical appointments. I put off scheduling my yearly eye exam for years. It just seemed too stressful to call around trying to get an appointment, so I kept telling myself I'd do it the next day, or the next day, or the next day. It got to the point I could barely see my computer screen in front of me, and I knew I had to do something. But what about all that stress and hassle? Well, once I found out about ZocDoc, the sponsor of today's video, I realized scheduling healthcare doesn't have to be a big deal. I don't know about you, but between ADHD making some tasks feel super overwhelming and social anxiety making me nervous about phone calls, finding a doctor and scheduling appointments has always felt like some huge, insurmountable obstacle. That's why I love ZocDoc. Instead of being faced with the huge task of searching through tons of websites and calling around to different doctors just to find out if they have availability, ZocDoc lets me easily search for and compare thousands of healthcare providers all in one place. And it gives me information on each doctor, plus reviews from real patients, so I can easily find the right fit for me. Appointments happen super fast, and you might even find same-day appointments. Plus, best of all, ZocDoc is totally free, which is huge considering how expensive healthcare can get already. already. I was able to find an eye doctor and schedule an appointment in minutes, and it was a huge weight off my shoulders to finally be able to check that off my to-do list. If you want to finally check your appointment off your to-do list, check out ZocDoc using my link on screen or in the description and pinned comment. It doesn't have to be hard or intimidating to prioritize your health. Thanks so much to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video and for helping us all take better care of our health. The next big thing you can do with a jailbroken PS3 is rip your physical PS3 games to your PS3's internal hard drive or an external one, whether you want to backup or just want to save yourself the trouble of switching out discs every time you want to play a different game. One way to do this is using a homebrew app called Multiman. If you want to rip the games directly to your PS3's internal storage, there's not really any big hassle. If you want them stored on an external hard drive, Multiman can do that too, but the thing to keep in mind is if your external hard drive is formatted to FAT32 and the game has files larger than 4 GB, Multiman will automatically split them into smaller files, but they won't be playable from the external hard drive. They'll only be playable once moved to internal storage. But if you want to be able to play the ISOs from your external hard drive, there are a few ways you can do this. One way is to format the hard drive to NTFS and use Webman Mod and Prep ISO. Normally, a PS3 can only recognize FAT32 hard drives and MBR partition, but Webman Mod will allow it to recognize NTFS format. Then using Prep ISO, which is a companion tool to Webman Mod, you'll be able to view and launch the ISOs from the mounted hard drive. Another option is using the Irisman Homebrew app, which can accomplish the same thing but with more stable NTFS support if that's the format you're using. Having the ability to rip PS3 games to your console or an external hard drive is really cool, not just from a convenience standpoint, but also from a preservation standpoint. Even if something happens to your PS3 game discs, you'll still have your backup files. Game ownership is such an important thing, like actually owning your games and no one can take them away. Couldn't you just download the games from the internet should something happen to your physical copies? Sure, but who's to say Sony won't go freaking crazy one day and DMCA literally everything they can possibly find? If you rip your own physical games, there's no way for anyone to take them from you. I mean, unless someone for some reason really wanted to break into your house and steal your PS3 game backups, but outside of that very unlikely scenario, those games are yours forever so long as you take steps to preserve them. Next, even if you don't have a PS3 with backwards compatibility, a jailbroken PS3 can emulate tons of PS2 games. Only launch model PS3s can play PS2 games using hardware, but with custom firmware, including custom firmware installed via mod chip, you can launch PS2 ISOs super easily without doing anything special. But if your PS3 model is running PS3 Hen, you can't just launch the ISO for whatever PS2 game you want to play all willy-nilly. The ISO has to be encrypted first. The easiest way to do this is with Multiman, Webman Mod, and the PS2 Classics launcher and config apps. The more irritating way to do this would be to use a PC app called PS2 Classics GUI, but I don't really like this method. Not every PS2 game is going to emulate perfectly, and sometimes they won't even be close to playable, though some issues can be fixed with a config file for that specific game, which is where the PS2 config database app comes in. There's also a giant compatibility list where you can see what games have been tested and how playable they are. Over 1,100 PS2 games are playable without any noticeable issues, so chances are you'll find something you can play. Additionally, all PS3 models are backwards compatible with PS1 game discs, but with a jailbroken PS3, whether using custom firmware or Hen, you can play both PS1 games burned onto discs or as ISOs stored on internal or external storage. And additionally, jailbroken PS3s can also emulate some PSP games, with about 60% of the PSP library being compatible from what I could tell. But wait, there's more! Your jailbroken PS3 can emulate more than just PlayStation whatever games. You can also install RetroArch, then load and play ROMs from an external hard drive. You can emulate tons of stuff including Game Boy, GBC, GBA, NES, SNES, Genesis, and even arcade games. There are tons of other things a jailbroken PS3 can do depending on whether you're using CFW, QCFW, or Hen, like overclocking, custom fan settings so your little friend doesn't overheat, and modifying save files and trophies, just to name a few. Trust me, there's a lot you can do. So basically, there are many benefits and few drawbacks. One drawback is technically playing online with a jailbroken PS3 can get your PSN account permanently banned, but the community is really clever and awesome, so of course you can help avoid that by taking a minute to spoof your firmware with some homebrew shenanigans. I mean, you should probably still use a throwaway PSN account to be safe, but that's pretty much the biggest thing I can think of to keep in mind. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring the video. Make sure to check them out using my link in the description and pinned comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye!